When I think back to that night, I never imagined it would be one of those turning points in my life as a mother, the kind of moment that carves itself into your memory and stays there forever. My name is Sarah, I'm 45 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life doing what mothers do: cooking, cleaning, working, listening, guiding, and worrying. Always worrying. My son Ethan had just turned 21, and while I was proud of the man he was becoming, I could sense something was wrong in him, something he wasn't telling me. I brushed it off at first, convincing myself that he was just stressed about school, about work, about life in general, but deep down I knew it was something heavier than that. The house was quiet that evening. I had just finished folding laundry in the living room when I noticed Ethan's door shut tight. That wasn't unusual, but lately, it had been happening more often. He would come home, retreat into his room, and barely say a word over dinner. I told myself it was normal. He was 21 after all, old enough to want his own space, old enough to keep things private. But as I set down the stack of neatly folded clothes and looked toward his closed door, a strange heaviness pressed against my chest. I walked down the hallway slowly, almost against my own will. I wasn't sure what I was looking for or what I expected to find, but I paused at his door and listened. At first, all I could hear was silence, and then, faintly, a sound that broke me inside. Soft, muffled sobbing. My hand froze on the doorknob. My son, my strong, tall, grown son, was crying in his room alone. My instinct told me to burst in, wrap him in my arms, and tell him everything was going to be okay, but I hesitated. He was a man now, not the little boy who used to run to me with scraped knees. Would he even want me there? Would he see my presence as comfort or as intrusion? But before I could decide, my heart chose for me. I opened the door quietly, and there he was, sitting on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, shoulders shaking. My voice caught in my throat. "Ethan," I whispered. He looked up, startled, his eyes red, his face wet with tears, and for a moment, we both froze. He looked like a child again, vulnerable and raw. "Mom," he muttered, quickly wiping his face. I'm fine." But I could see he wasn't fine, not even close. I sat down beside him, not too close, but close enough for him to feel my presence. "You don't have to tell me if you're not ready," I said softly. "But I need you to know I'm here. Whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone." At first, he stayed quiet, staring down at the floor, his hands clenching and unclenching as if he were fighting with himself. Then finally, he exhaled a shaky breath and said, "I can't do this anymore, Mom." My heart stopped. "Do what, honey?" I asked, my hand gently brushing his arm. "This pressure. The expectations. School, work, everything. I feel like I'm drowning, and no one sees it. I smile, I nod, I tell everyone I'm fine, but I'm not. I haven't been fine for a long time." His words spilled out like a flood, his voice cracking with every confession. "I don't want to disappoint you, Mom. I don't want to be a failure." Tears filled my own eyes as I listened. All those times I thought he was just tired or distracted, he had been hiding a storm inside him, trying to shield me from it. I reached for his hand and held it tight. "Ethan, you could never disappoint me. Do you hear me? Never. You are my son, and nothing you could ever do would make me stop loving you." He leaned into me then, resting his head against my shoulder, just like he used to when he was small. For a long while, we just sat there, mother and son, in silence, letting the weight of his words sink between us. It was in that silence that I realized how much he had been carrying, how much I had missed while thinking he was just adjusting to adulthood. That night changed everything. It was the first time in years that Ethan truly opened up to me, and it was the first time I realized how close I had come to losing him emotionally. In the days that followed, I made it my mission not to let him retreat back into that darkness alone. We talked more, sometimes in the kitchen over a late-night snack, sometimes in the car as I drove him to class, sometimes just sitting in the living room with the TV on in the background, but ignored. He told me about the pressure he felt to succeed in college, how he was afraid of not measuring up to his friends, how he worried about money and his future. And I told him the truth. That life isn't about perfect paths, that sometimes falling is part of learning, and that he never had to hide his struggles from me. One weekend, I suggested we take a walk in the park. The autumn leaves were falling in golden and red waves, and as we walked side by side, I could see some of the weight lifting from his shoulders. He started to laugh again, little things at first, but each laugh was like music to my ears. He admitted that talking helped, that maybe he didn't need to figure out everything right away, that maybe it was okay to just breathe. There were still hard days. Nights when I would hear him pacing in his room, when the shadows of self-doubt crept back in. But the difference now was that he let me in. He didn't hide behind a smile anymore. When he felt low, he told me. When he felt overwhelmed, we talked it through. Sometimes we cried together, sometimes we prayed together, and sometimes we just sat in silence, knowing we weren't alone. Slowly but surely, Ethan started to heal. His grades improved, not because he suddenly had all the answers, but because he stopped punishing himself for not being perfect. He found a part-time job he enjoyed, one that gave him purpose without crushing him. He even started reconnecting with old friends, no longer ashamed of showing his true self. One evening, months later, as we sat down at the dining table with dinner spread out before us, Ethan looked at me with a smile I hadn't seen in years. "Thanks for not giving up on me, Mom," he said quietly. I squeezed his hand across the table, my throat too tight with emotion to answer right away. When I finally found my voice, all I could say was, "I never will." And that was the truth. That night when I caught him in his private moment of struggle, I thought it might break me. Instead, it became the beginning of healing for both of us. It reminded me that no matter how old our children get, they will always need us. Maybe not in the same way they did as toddlers, but in ways just as important. And it taught Ethan that vulnerability is not weakness, that sharing your pain doesn't make you less of a man, but more human. Life hasn't been perfect since then, whose life ever is, but it's been real.
Honest.
And that's better than perfect. I no longer fear the closed doors or the long silences. Instead, I knock, I listen, and I let my son know I'm here. Always. Sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I think back to that evening and shudder at what could have been if I had ignored the sound of his sobbing, if I had convinced myself it was none of my business. But I didn't, and because of that, Ethan knows he's not alone. And as a mother, that's all I could ever want, to be the hand he reaches for in the dark, the safe place he can always come back to, no matter how old he gets. That moment changed everything, not just for him, but for me too. It reminded me that love is not just about providing meals or paying bills, but about seeing,